What's going on, everybody? It's the VG Mobster here with a Switch review of Panzer Dragoon. If you guys like this review, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to become part of the Switch Mob family. Alright, here we're going to start with Panzer Dragoon Remake. Now, I was a huge fan of the Saturn version, like a lot of you guys probably are that are watching this review. The game was just so unique, and so many of those aspects actually come into this version, this remake for the Switch, and they actually improve upon a lot of things in it. There's some things that fall a little short. We'll go into that. But overall, this game, especially after the patch 1.3 that just dropped, this is a really good, worthy remake of the game. So let's go into it a little bit. We'll start with the graphics for this remake. The graphics in this, they do a really good job of updating graphics from the Saturn version. The detail and the environments are pretty varied. With the patch 1.3, they actually added a 60 frames per second mode, which makes the combat and the shooting and the flying a little more fluid. The dragon does bounce a little bit too much. We'll go into that in the gameplay section. But in terms of the looks, like, there is a big upgrade here. You guys can see some of the footage of it and right here, and it is a big upgrade, and I'd say like it makes it look modern but stays true to the original for the most part. So I think they actually did a really good job updating the graphics for the times. Now, in terms of the gameplay of this game, they actually, with the patch 1.3, this is the other big thing that they added. They made the turning less laggy than it was when it first initially dropped. So the turning and actually the movement of the dragon are much smoother, and the reticle is smoother when you're going to aim. So I think these are really big improvements. When the game first came out before the big 1.3 patch, it was very laggy. Your button inputs were delayed. It just felt very felt like a little half-assed there, but they really did. They came back and they fixed it. The dual controls are really good. I was using them. I beat the game without really any problems. It's very fluid, the shooting. The one thing I can say though on the gameplay that's really not up to par, and I know the developers have already addressed this, is that they did actually add gyro aiming with the new patch. And the gyro aiming here is just not up to snuff, for sure. I mean, it's not very sensitive. It doesn't really go where you go, and there's been so many other games on Switch that have used gyro so well that this game just seems very lacking in that department. So I hope, and I know the developers are aware of this, and I hope in a future patch that they fix the gyro. If you're going to add it, make sure that it's correct. And it's definitely not correct yet in this 1.3 patch. But in terms of the dual stick and the trigger button controls to go backwards and forwards, they've done a really good job with that, and they've upgraded substantially from the initial release. Now let's move on to the music and the sound effects of this game. The music here, they actually used the original soundtrack before the 1.3 patch, but now with the 1.3 patch, they actually added the remix soundtrack too. In addition to the original soundtrack. Now, the original soundtrack, I did my first playthrough with the original soundtrack, and then I did my second playthrough with the remix soundtrack that's now available. And I actually really like both, to be honest. I didn't mind the original soundtrack. It's so good. It's very atmospheric. It really gets you in the mood. It's a nice ambiance with it, but also is aggressive when it has to be. When there's more, bigger boss battles and a lot of enemies on screen, like, it kicks up the action. And the remix version just gives it a little more of a modern twist to it. as opposed to the original soundtrack, but I think they're both really good. And also the sound effects. They actually, I feel like they also did tweak the sound effects in this version as opposed to the launch version. I feel like they're a little more crisp, a little more accurate to when they're actually supposed to be coming off on screen. I felt like some of the sound effects were a little laggy and a little hollow before this patch. So I think they actually did do a little bit of sound effects rework on it, and it definitely sounds really good, and it keeps you immersed in the action. So in terms of the sound effects, the sound effects and the actual orchestration and the soundtrack of the game, really good. I mean, top notch. I don't think they really had to improve too much because the original game had really good things, but in terms of the remix soundtrack, I actually don't mind that either. So it's nice to have options and the toggle between them, and it also adds a little bit to the replayability like that, so you can see the different soundtracks. But in terms of the sound effects department, this game really excelled. Now, in terms of the replayability, let me tell you guys a little bit about this. If you've never played Panzer Dragoon, the original, it is a very short game. I ended up beating the game in about 49 minutes. Again, I didn't get all the secrets, and my accuracy was pretty good. I think I was about 70 to 75% on each level, give or take. So I did hit a lot of the enemies. I mean, obviously, this is a score kind of base-driven game, so they do keep your scores, and when you do beat the game, you can go back. They have a level select opens up, so you can go back and go and try to beat your scores. But I was definitely a little let down that there was no online leaderboard option. I know I've actually just played Streets of Rage 4, which is a great game, which I probably also will review on the channel as well. And this actually has the online leaderboard feature, so you can kind of like brag to your friends like, hey, I got this high score, let's see if you can beat it. This game I think would have been perfect for online leaderboards, and it doesn't have it. I'm a little confused why they didn't add that in, to be honest. But I think that definitely hurts the replayability a little bit. I mean, obviously after you beat it one time, you're going to want to go back because it's such a short experience. You're going to try to beat your scores, but eventually that's going to kind of wear off. And I feel like if you were able to compete with your friends, or if there was some online like dragon battle mode that they added in, I think that would have been better. Also, like I said in the beginning, the length of the game, I feel like, again, this is a straight remake. The original game was short as well, so I understand that you should go in with that, knowing that, because it does say remake. But I feel like, especially with the precedent set by other remakes, it wouldn't have hurt to add a couple more levels. Now, I will say in the patch 1.3, they did add episode 0, which is kind of like a time-based attack where you can see how many enemies you can hit in a standard 1 environment, and you can kind of go back. So that does add another like 8 minutes or so of gameplay to it. So it is a welcome addition, but I feel like they could have used at least maybe 4 more levels here to make it a solid 12 instead of the 8. Or 13 with episode 0 unlocked. I think that would have really added to the replayability, just to make it a little more beefier experience, especially if you're charging MSRP on this is $24.99 US. So I feel for $24.99, should have probably been able to add a couple more levels, since they did such a good job on it, and it's really fun to play. I think it would have been a welcome ability. Now, in terms of the value, like I kind of touched on before, the value. Now, $25, I think, for this. Now, again, they did add episode 0. They did improve a lot of the controls and the performance, because before on the 30, even 30 frames, it was dropping from that. So now to add a performance mode, to me, it felt pretty locked at 60 frames per second. So in terms of the controls being better, they did add that extra episode. You can go and replay the levels. In terms of 25, and I know right now they do have a special. If you bought a Forever Entertainment game, they are giving 20% off for the for the digital version, so it comes to $19.99. I think that's a little better. I think that's probably where it should have started instead of 25. And then obviously the physicals from limited run are 35 for the standard and 60 for the collector's edition. I think that's, a little high for this game. But again, it's like if you're like me, you have nostalgia for this game. It's still fun to play. It is a really good time. So I think in terms of sheer enjoyment, I personally don't think it's that bad, but I think in terms of the amount of content, I'd probably wait still maybe even more for a sale, maybe 15 or lower, seems more fair in terms of the value scale for me. But overall, let the Don give his overall opinion here. I think the game, in terms of the pros, it has really good graphic fidelity. The gameplay is much improved. It's actually a really fun game. The bosses are really fun to go. So the actual game itself is really fun. I just feel that the lack of online leaderboards for the replayability, the lack of an online mode, the gyro controls really being broken. Those are kind of things that peg it down for me. But I'd say overall I would give it a 3.75 out of 5 fedoras. From the VG Mobster here for this one. So if you guys want to pick up this game, I'll leave the link in the description below. And again, make sure you guys subscribe and hit the notification bell for more Switch Mob reviews from the VG Mobster. All right, this is an offer you can't refuse. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.